meet the global benchmarks, then we have to follow the global strategies. And we always drew parallel with NASA without realizing that NASA never depended primarily on the government source. Most of its resource was non-government. So for the first time, when we gave up that inhibition or broke that taboo of the past, which media fondly also described as unlocking of the space sector of India, we have a huge, huge investment from the private sector, even the FDIs, which have been allowed, which has been liberalized in case of space. And the result is that our first generation startups are not only world-class, but they have turned into massive
Okay, so I'll plug them because Srinath and Tanveer and Agni Cool, Bellatrix, Dijantra, Pixel, all of them were here sir, this morning to have these conversations, and they were sitting with Mike Massimino of NASA, and Oleg has been here. He's of course from Russia. He's a cosmonaut. So we've had fascinating conversations. But how exciting is it for people who don't know? So Pixel has just done a launch, and they do multi-spectrum analysis of Earth imagery. They've done a launch on with SpaceX. Bellatrix, Agni Cool, they are doing rocket testing, and maybe within a year or so they'll have rockets to go at least to near Earth orbit.
Yeah, the other one which also came almost at the same time, the Skyroot have set up actually a rocket factory close to the Hyderabad airport. So that means there was huge amount of potential which was not finding the right kind of outlet or the right kind of enabling milieu which has been provided now. And now that it is there, I think the best testimony is that we had this European Union delegation over here in Delhi these days.
You've just come from the meeting, and I know some of it's off the record. And I believe the Prime Minister has spent several hours. So Absolutely. This is something we are taking very seriously.
Yeah, but what I was going to tell you is that this morning itself, I happened to be with the commissioner responsible for space sector. Right. And he said that 21st century is going to be the century of space, and India is going to occupy that space. So I think that is how now the world has started looking at us. The space sector of India, the manner it has undergone a reshaping or rejuvenation in the last 5 years or 6 years has actually changed the perception about how India is looked at by the rest of the world. And not only that, I think our achievements in the space sector have also given us space in the media. Otherwise, in conclaves like this, science was hardly a subject of a very elaborate discussion. But now there are exclusive conclaves dedicated to space sector.
Okay.
So I think that's
pretty much every interview I've done with him for the last several years is we've always picked up on space.
No, that's very kind of you. What I'm trying to say is that it has generated a huge amount of popular interest. At the same time, it has also given us an esteem and confidence, a level of confidence to relate to the rest of the world. And the world now has begun looking up to us not as followers, but as a country which can offer some leads, cues, as we are doing, right? In case of Chandrayaan, as you said. Now, for example, the SpaceX mission, which was launched on the last day of the last year, 31st, it has come out with a novel experiment of growing seedlings in the space, that program called CROP, or orbital plant research. So that way, we are in certain ways undertaking initiatives ahead of some of the others in the space sector.
So India now has, of course, the various Chandrayans which are circling the moon. We have Aditya, which is studying the sun.
Absolutely.
What are the other plans? Let's talk about the future. What's happening next?
Yeah, see, this 2025, we began with this SpaceX, which was the last day, then a NavIC satellite. Now, very soon, we'll have a US satellite being launched, which would be, again, dedicated to the kind of work that you're doing, communication through satellites. And then we have a NISAR satellite, which is a collaboration between NASA and ISRO. It had to be done somewhere in September, October, but it had to be put off. Some component of the American collaboration was found to be redone. So they took it back, and now I think by March it will happen. Then we'll have 2 or 3 test flights.
That's a polite way of saying that NASA had to redo it. Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. So then we'll have 1 or 2 test flights. And finally, maybe towards the end of the year, we'll have a final, you can say, dress rehearsal flight for Gaganyan, the first human mission into the space. Of course, we had a human being in the form of Rakesh Sharma in 1980s, but that was a Soviet mission. So the final flight towards the end of this year, which would carry a robo, a female robo called Vayo Mitra. She'll perform all those tasks which are to be expected by the human astronaut and also come back safe. So when all that is accomplished, and we are also confident of getting back our astronauts safe, because sending them up is important, but equally important is getting them safe back. And that's a very collective and collaborative, integrated effort where the naval guards are involved, the Indian Navy would be involved. So when all that is accomplished, then hopefully in the beginning of next year, or maybe towards the middle of it, an actual human mission will happen.
Okay, so...
And then if you talk of the calendar, then 26 hopefully would be marked by Gaganyan, 27 with Chandrayaan 4, which will have that docking
Tell us something. Chandrayaan 4 is now. What's the next mission? We've done
and
South Pole. What's next, sir?
docking and docking,
Okay.
which will do docking and docking, also collect the samples which are already there in Chandrayaan 3. Then 27, we'll have a Venus.
Okay, so let me hold you there. Chandrayaan 4 is going to land on the surface of the moon.
Yes.
Then take off from the surface of the moon, dock and send and come back to Earth with samples.
Yes, it would, yeah, it will dock and also possibly try to take the samples which have been collected, get them back. And that's why our SpaceX was very important, because it's a huge bearing on the successful accomplishment of our subsequent missions. Chandrayaan 4, of course. Venus, of course, is going to happen in 28. But when we are also planning an international space station, indigenous space station called Bharatiya Space Station by 2035. For that also docking and docking will be very important, because you have to make the astronaut move in. Not only that, docking and docking also comes into application when, for example, you want to supplement the payloads, or you think a satellite is doing a good job, you don't wish to get it back, you want to prolong its life.
Okay, so...
And by 2040, I think, will be the landmark year when actually an Indian astronaut lands on the surface of the moon.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've sort of heard it here. This is not next month's plan. This is a plan for the next 15 years. And of course, space research sometimes takes those kind of time scales. But all right, in terms of the excitement factor, are we seeing the same transition that we've seen in the United States? That NASA goes more into research and the private guys do more into near-Earth commercial launches? Is that what we're going to see, sir?
Yeah, see, gradually we are now very new to the private sector. But of course, we have the communication satellites, the navigation satellites, and we also have the Earth observatories. And the private sector is gradually now, entering in. So I hope the manner it evolves will move in that direction. But of course, there is a fascination in sending up these rockets, and it sounds a little romantic also. But equally, I think accomplishing is our Earth observatory satellites, which have given us a kind of an esteem of being a country more accomplished in disaster preparedness compared to several other countries. And so accurate now that we are catering our inputs to most of the neighboring countries, all the SAARC countries also. So I think the private sector, as it finds, some of these areas which you mentioned, getting them better outcomes, they would step in, because after all, they also have to sustain. Yes. Because it's easy to start a startup, it's difficult to sustain it. So sustainability comes from a very close synergy between research, academia, startup, and industry. And a huge lot of industrial mapping is also, behind the scene going on. Because if they find that you have many takers for Earth observatories, like for example, now our forecast system is becoming almost a part of life. For example, in the heavy downpour in Mumbai during the monsoon season, people are now getting habitual of looking at their watch to decide whether to carry umbrella with them or not. So we have a program called Now, which gives you an accurate forecast for the next 3 hours. Now, tomorrow, when a private agency finds that, okay, this is now going to sell us, so they would step into that.
Fair enough.
So it'll be, kind of a reciprocal thing happening.
Okay, fair enough. So let me put this into perspective.
And similarly, the communication satellites. Now we have more of television channels, seeking our services. So also, and that's the reason that the private parties are coming to seek our services in PPP model for communications. And we set out 72 communication satellites for some of the private players who were engaged in the communication industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm out of time, so let me put some of these thoughts in perspective. He said TV channels, that's my neck of the woods. There are 970 television channels operating in India, of which 350 are news channels. Believe it or not. India today is consuming 20 gigabytes of data per month.
India is a huge market, and that's why I said the private sector also will be determined, will be definitely driven and motivated by all these facts, figures that you are narrating.
So these are not plugs, they're not our advertisers, but watch out for Pixel and Dijantra and Skyroot and Agnikul. And just to put it in perspective, you've heard of the cosmonauts, the astronauts. We're going to be calling them Gaganyans. Jitendra Singh, as always, sir, what a treat it was. Thank you for taking out your time.
Thank you, Rishabh, for a very informative conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for that wonderful session. It was ever engaging and a lot to learn from. All right, for our next session, we're going to, in fact, hear from some stalwarts on what is going to be next in nuclear